Good morning. Good morning. It is great to be here. My name is Mara Aspinall, and I am a very proud member of the board of AZBio. I am also the former CEO of Ventana Medical Systems, CEO of Health Catalyst, executive chairman of GenePeaks, but most importantly for this panel, one of the co-founders of the School of Biomedical Diagnostics at ASU. But we'll talk about that later. But I'm here today to moderate what I think is going to be the most important panel of your day. Granted, I'm biased, so sorry for the other panelists here. But for those of you who know me, know that I have very strong opinions. But rarely do I say something that nobody will disagree with. But today I'm going to say something that I'm convinced you will all believe is truly a universal truth. And what is that? It's all about the people. So whether you're starting a company, a lab, an institute, it is all about the people that you work with. So today we have an incredible panel to talk about hiring those people, keeping those people, and motivating the right people along the way. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to them. We'll have the chance to ask them a lot of questions and truly to have a discussion amongst our panelists. We're privileged to have folks from industry, large and small, from labs, large and small. So with that, let me hand it over. Brady, you want to start?
Hello. I'm Brady Young, the head of HR for the Translational Genomic Research Institute, TGen.
My name's Tom Longstreth. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisitions for Ventana Medical Systems, a member of the Roche Group.
I'm Stacie Mallen. I'm a member of AZBio and a board member, but I'm the head of all things people for Ulthera, which is now owned by Merz Pharmaceutical.
I'm Adrienne Scheck. I'm a brain tumor researcher at the Barrow Neurological Institute, but I also run as a volunteer, I run a high school program that puts high school kids into research laboratories.
Wonderful, thank you. And to our panel, I'm going to ask them a number of questions ahead of time. We got some questions from all of you, and thank you. So first, let me ask about the overall competitiveness. Clearly, we hear that time and time again, but I'm going to start with Tom. As one of the largest companies in the state that I know very well. Can you talk about the overall competitiveness of the market for talent today and bringing people to Arizona?
So if you look at even taking a few years ago, back in 2009 when the market kind of hit the skids, even at that time, through a lot of research that we had done, we had noticed that the STEM field unemployment rate was under 3% across the country. So fast forward that, now that the market is up and going, and not only that, companies are making big investments into projects, the talent has now become even more scarce. And what we've done is we've taken a step back to take conversation with our management team to understand the work that they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, and what type of talent is needed to be able to fulfill those projects. So being able to recruit here to Arizona, back in 2015, we had to recruit about 50 to 52% of our workforce for technical and professional jobs outside of Arizona. What we've been able to do is be able to go out there, talk about our organization, our mission, our values, also talk about the quality of life that individuals can have coming here from markets such as the Bay Area or from Boston, some of the bigger tech areas. So we definitely have seen an uptick in the competitiveness around the talent, but we've also been able to combat that and be able to provide a better way for our employees.
So Stacie, consistent with your approach at Ulthera?
It is. I've been in the Valley for 20 years and focused on talent acquisition for much of my career in 6 different startups. And I think the biggest change that we have seen recently is this movement towards purpose-driven organizations and having something bigger that your organization looks at to keep everyone moving in the right direction. At this point in the talent marketplace, that's what's setting organizations apart, being able to attract and retain the best talent, regardless of what industry that you're in. The movement of conscious capitalism, as an example, is only really just beginning to get momentum. And it's not just with Whole Foods and other companies that you hear about all the time, but it really is going to change the face of industries and how organizations behave, but also how people evaluate those organizations and being a part of them.
Super. Adrienne, one of the things that Tom mentioned was STEM and STEM education, and you've seen both sides of it. You work with the schools around STEM education, and you're getting the results of that, I assume, in your labs. Can you talk a little bit about Arizona specifically, where STEM education is today, and does that change your recruiting for talent?
I don't know that I can, it would be hubris for me to say what is going on in STEM in all of Arizona. I can talk about our program in our lab, and what we do is we send letters out to every area high school, public, private, charter, and allow them to nominate 2 students, and then we try to find mentors to place these kids in laboratories because they can do amazing things. One of the hardest things is convincing a lot of the companies and a lot of the labs how much these kids can do. And actually finding internships and finding places for these students. And we sort of, even with the community college students and some of the undergrads, I sort of do the try before you buy. If I need a technician, if it's somebody that interned in my laboratory, I know all about that kid. And I'm more likely to offer them a job, and I'm more likely to try to help them find a job. So from that level, I think things are awesome. I think a lot of our schools are doing an incredible job bringing newer biotechnology into the schools. Some of them possibly don't have the funds or the knowledge. So you've got the magnet schools that are incredible, that are kind of sucking up all the internships because the kids really have to do the internships. And then you've got the other schools that possibly are struggling. So I think I'd like to see a little bit more happening at the schools that aren't the magnet schools to make opportunities for these kids.
And Brady, can you comment on this? I mean, at TGen, you must hire a lot of people at all different levels, some with deep science education, and I assume some maybe not. So can you talk about how you look at bringing in talent and the challenges you have?
Speaking of the students, TGen's fortunate enough to have been the benefactor of the Helios Scholars Foundation donation, a 25-year scholarship, and so we bring in 45 students, undergrads, graduates, and some high schoolers. And part of our mission is to go out and get the underserved communities and get those students in here. They're incredibly bright. They're amazing what they can do. I often say I'm the dumbest person in the building because these kids are just, we saw the posters out there. They're incredible. A couple of them are our students. And so we make a conscious decision. We get out there, like you said, to try before you buy on both sides. One of the students came to me recently and said, this was great. I had a great experience at TGen, and I have no desire to be in research. No, it's a good outcome. It's a terrific outcome. They went on to do incredible things elsewhere. So yeah, I think reach them early, high school even younger, educate them, get them excited.
Yeah, and we've actually been doing that. We have probably that many kids even without a Helios grant. We do it as a volunteer, so it would be awesome because what that means is we can't pay the students, which means some of the younger, except for college students where our foundation gives a limited amount. So that's another place where bringing in some of these underserved high school students, it would be useful because some of them have to make money. They have to have a job, and that means they can't put the time in the lab. So that's a really good comment you made about the funding.
Super. Let's move to social media. It's an understatement to say it's making a big impact in our communities. How do you guys each use social media for recruiting? Tom, you want to start again?
Sure. Our organization leverages social media heavily through Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, a number of associations. This is one of our main avenues of being able to go out and pull the talent that we need. We also notice that we get a lot of referrals to our organization. So our employees that are able to go out, preach about the work that we're doing, some of the development and research the organization's undertaken. So this has been a key avenue for us to be able to attract talent, not just within the U.S., but also outside the United States.
There's been a perception, at least initially, that social media works with more junior people. Is it also help you recruiting more senior people as well? Is it across the entire spectrum?
It actually, all the way up to VP and senior VP roles, we've actually found candidates through these different avenues. So it's not just the younger generation that is starting to change. You're starting to see, those that are seasoned individuals start to look at social media in a different way.
Stacie, have you found the same?
You know, we are not the biggest company up here, but from a consumer brand standpoint, that was certainly an advantage for us. We were on the Today Show in 2020 with Ulthera and now Selfina, so that certainly as a smaller organization to leverage, if you have a consumer-based brand, to leverage that in social media in order to create brand ambassadors, not only from the standpoint of talent, but for your brand initiatives, for driving your top line, and leveraging social media for that. But also from an internal engagement standpoint, again, if you have a strong culture, values, a purpose, leveraging social media to tell your story and not just being holistically dependent upon a career website, for example. This has created other avenues for us to create more engagement across the board. And people think about careers, they think about just LinkedIn. That is really kind of an old thought process around how to leverage social media, even though LinkedIn has certainly evolved recently to be much more engaging and be able to post much like you do on Facebook. They're changing. But I think you have to keep a continuous eye on what is trending, not only with your employee base, but also what's in the marketplace. And I think companies are still a little bit behind on how they're leveraging social media to engage internally and externally.
Adrienne, Brady, comments from you about, does it work just as well with scientists?
Honestly, I haven't tried to hire a PhD level, but what I'm finding from my colleagues and from a lot of the companies is they put out what they've published, what's going on, when they've given a presentation. So from that point of view, I actually check Facebook every day for some extent to find out, okay, who just found out about a publication I might have missed? And I think the students go on things like that to find where they might be able to get a scientist that would take a student into a lab. So I think other people use it to find us.
Yeah. Brady, anything to add?
I was in New Orleans recently for the Cancer Research Conference and I met a lot of great students. And I was surprised, you talk to them about their posters and I was thinking, oh, they're going to hand me a CV. And they hand me a business card with a QR thing on the back, right to their LinkedIn profile. And then I give them my card and they're like, is your LinkedIn profile on your card, Brady? And I said, no. Oops. So yeah, they're getting really savvy that way. I think social media is really important for sure. And then for TGen, being out in the public eye so often, our Facebook and for the donor base and people who are just interested in what we're doing, that's huge. I get a lot of people just going, I want to be part of it. How do I do that? And so along with the social media, I think it's really important. It can't just be about technology. It's got to be about what you do with the people once they contact you, the interaction with them, and also about your message, as Stacie was saying earlier. It's all about what you're telling them. What's the content? What are you saying to them? What's it like to be a member of TGen? Not just, oh, cool, we're helping patients, but like, what's it like to live there? What's it like to grow up there? Are you having fun? Are you growing? So the message is as important as the platform.
And something that I think is just starting to trend is video. I had an experience recently, there's a local company called Video Loco, and I gave them this story. My daughter turned 10, and someone sent me a video of her in the backseat of a car videotaping herself when she was 3. The emotion and the connection that happens via video is much different than it is through a career portal with static images, as an example. So just something to consider when you think about how to engage and connect with people. Video is emotional, and so if you want to connect with people on a bigger level around your values, your purpose, and your culture, it's probably a better medium to do that than just with the written word. And obviously things like Snapchat and some of that video is the main mechanism that the millennials are communicating through as well.
So one thing sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, one other thing about social media that I've noticed is the quality makes a big difference. You can make a very good impression, but you can also make a very bad impression. As a scientist, I'm looking for somebody who's a perfectionist, so even at that level, it can make a difference.
The one thing I wanted to add is actually Brady had mentioned how do you engage them after they reach out to you? We actually got a lot of feedback from our interns on they want to be able to stay engaged with our organization, and how do we do that? Because not always can you hire that intern at that time in which they graduate, but we're starting to see some of our interns that go out, find other opportunities, and circle back to us. So we are using social media to keep in touch with them, keep them up to date on opportunities, and make sure that they don't lose us as they continue through their career.
I think that's especially important when you're dealing with younger people because they're going to go off to college, they're going to go off to graduate school, but their family roots are here. So if they've had a good experience here in bioscience, for example, they might look to come back for bioscience after they've gotten their research chops and their PhDs and stuff, and that's a good way to get talent back.
Essentially building a community, a virtual community, for which they'll get their own networking. I do have to comment on the QR code on the back of the card. I was interviewing a candidate, and they looked at me and said, tell me what your ranking is in ResearchGate, which is a new social media where each of your publications are there and the number of citations. So my daughter's on it, so I happened to be on it, and I knew my number. But I have to tell you, it was quite intimidating to have candidates come back to you to say, well, tell me where you are in this, and an emboldeningness of the millennial generation that kind of changes the perspective. So let me ask you, to that extent, there's been a lot of talk about what millennials expect at the job. Are you finding that it truly is fundamentally different? Is it just the interview process, or is it something that changes the way they work with you? Stacie, we can start with you this time.
Sure. I don't want to say that the millennial theory is a myth. I mean, I think as a general rule of thumb, for those of us who are parents, we know that people want things faster. They want information faster. They want to be in the know. But again, I think it's a generation who is more connected to having something bigger than an organization that's just driven by profitability. I mean, I think that is, to me, the biggest difference. I think there are organizations, again, I have a child who works at a restaurant, and there are organizations out there that are struggling with this millennial issue. Let's take In-N-Out Burger as a good example. You slice tomatoes for a month until you're really good at slicing tomatoes. Those are the things that's just the reality of being in a working world. And ultimately, whether you have a millennial mindset or you're in your 50s, ultimately hard work and work ethic is ultimately what gets you where you need to be. I think at the engagement and the having a purpose and rallying around something that is bigger than profitability is, to me, what appears to be the most critical in engaging across the board at this point. And that again is true for people who have maybe been there, done that in their career, and they now are looking for something bigger and not just for the younger generation.
Others, is it harder to keep millennials interested and motivated?
From my experience, no. We took a survey from our interns last year and found out one of the things that really kind of struck a chord with us and the management team is they want to have development conversations with their management team every 2 weeks. Obviously, that's a very difficult thing to be able to provide when they're only there for 12 weeks. The management team has other things that they need to focus on. So finding them and trying to engage them is not a problem because many of them are actually well connected. I will state that I did comment a panel ago, millennials I think are improperly stereotyped. I think it's more about how they're raised and how they're brought up. And you can't just throw them all in a box and say this is how they are. I think we have to look at each person individually. And us as an organization continue to look at all our employees around what's their development performance goals and where do they want to go with their career. And I think you have to do the same with millennials. You just can't throw a stereotype on them and say they're all this way.
Adrienne, just say, you agree?
I was just going to say I completely agree. One thing with a lot of the schools now having more science at a higher biotech level, I'm finding more students coming in thinking they know how to do certain things and having to almost rein them back a little bit and saying, no, well, that's how it worked in the school, but it doesn't necessarily work the same way here. So if there's any change, really, it's more that, because the kids we get generally have the really good attitude like you're speaking about.
I think that's something that we found as well in working across the board in what is the current working world, is having authentic conversations with people from the beginning. There's a book that was recently published by Reid Hoffmeister called The Alliance that talks about the first conversation you always have with someone is about, on their first day, is, we're great you're here, you're part of the family. There's this lack of authenticity in that conversation, that the reality in this day and age is that people don't stay with organizations for 5 and 10 years. They stay 2 to 3 years. So having authentic conversations with people from the very beginning of their employment and their engagement with the organization, and talking about it, whether it's a millennial or not, about the fact that, hey, you're not going to be here forever. This is part of your career. What are you looking for from us, and what can we give to you? So this is a mutually beneficial relationship as you move into this organization. That's an authentic way to start a relationship with someone versus authenticity of talking about they're going to be there forever, which we know is no longer the reality of the working world at this point.
Super. Next issue, keeping people. We've talked a lot about getting people here. What are some of the key ways you've used to continue to motivate and keep people here? And I'll have a bias here, which is about training. One of the, lots of surveys will talk about that getting on-the-job training in some way, or going off-site to get an MBA, to get a master's degree, is important. To what extent do you see that in your organizations? Increasing, decreasing? How do you think about that in terms of retaining talent? Brady, you want to start?
Sure. I'll share a story I recently had. It says a lot about TGen that our people are getting calls all the time now, more now than ever. And one of my managers came to me recently and said, "Oh, Brady, the competitors are calling our people. They're calling the kids in the lab. What are we going to do?" He was really worried. And I said, and it's Bob. I'm going to call him Bob in case you know him. And I said, "Bob, well, let's walk through this. So how is our pay and benefits? Is it market or better around there?" He said, "Yeah." Okay, good. Is the job that they're doing in the lab tied to the mission of TGen? Can they see that? Yeah. Okay, good. Are you developing your people regularly? Yeah. Are you showing them career opportunities in your group? Yeah. "Bob, what else can we do?" And he's like, "I don't know, I guess nothing." And that's true. Our retention's really good at TGen. That's all you got to do. It's real basic, and a lot of what Stacie said as well, just have conversations with them and develop them.
And it works.
But
it also sounds like when you say this, it's not just a check mark. Your managers believe it, so they're living that. Others, comments, anything unique that you do that you can share with some of the large and small companies here?
I think, as an extension of what I was talking about before, is we have rotational positions. So let's say project management positions that are maybe not in a subject matter expert sort of capacity, but someone who can develop project management skill set in a project management role that's rotational. So that, again, goes to the point of allowing people to develop while contributing to the organization and gaining a new skill set in a rotation of a position. So that's something that very small companies can do to create a couple of positions or opportunities for people to develop internally to continue to keep them engaged, but also to allow there to be movement within the organization and better communication and cross-functional understanding across the organization versus being very siloed about how people are functioning is something that we did with our project management office, and it was very successful for us.
Super. I would say that we know in this room that Arizona is a place for the biosciences, whether it started 10 years ago with the Flynn roadmap, but it is a place that biosciences is beginning and continuing to grow and thrive. It sounds great, but I would submit that many people outside of this room, this state, this community don't know about the strength of biosciences. So I would ask each of the panelists, is that true, my statement here? Is it hard to bring people to Arizona when they're coming from outside of the state? And what's your biggest challenge and your secret to bring in the very best talent here?
So from my side, it is not difficult. We typically like to call when it's snowing. That usually tends to help. But really, when we sit down and we talk to candidates about our mission, our culture, what we're doing as an organization, our compensation, our benefits, that is very appealing to them. And then when on top of that, you're able to talk about the quality of life that they can have in the state of Arizona, that is another selling factor for us. So we do not struggle with it. We've actually been very fortunate that we have these components, and that's something that I would advise any company is look at what you're able to offer, and then obviously make sure your packages stay and remain competitive with the market, not just here in Arizona, but nationally. If you do that, then I think you're able to attract the right people.
That is great, and many of you are from companies that are very well known, which helps, whether it's Barrow or TGen or Ventana. But Stacie, I'll ask you from Ulthera's perspective, now it's well known. How did you deal with that when it was a small company that nobody heard of and it might have been perceived as a risk to go somewhere? Because we've got a lot of smaller companies in the audience who are not yet brand names.
Right, so we're all part of, if you're here, you're connected to AZBio. There are some really cool things happening in Arizona around this industry, around the startup community, and I think knowing that story and telling that story is a big part of it. We leveraged a lot of different mechanisms in order to attract the very best of the best away from GE, away from some of the bigger pharma organizations. And well, first of all, you're going to hear Matt Likens later, not to tout him in advance, but you know, a big part of it was our strength in our leadership team, at the top being Matt's ability to tell the story and rally around a purpose and our values and the 7 operating principles. So again, I think I continue to go back to this story, which is people want to connect, but we also leverage the fact that we're part of AZBio, we're part of this community, and this community is doing amazing things here in Arizona. It's not as well known as I think it could be and it should be, and we're working on that. But everyone in this room, it's everyone's responsibility to know that story so they can be telling it.
So let me ask you, Stacie, and stay with that before I go back to the rest of the panel. AZBio has done a number of specific initiatives to help connect people in the state. Maybe you could talk about the Career Center and the Development Center from AZBio, and I'll add some things that are happening in Tucson as well.
Sure. So there is a career site, and many of you don't know about it because there's not a whole lot of jobs out there. But I would encourage you, especially as we talk about internships and residencies, it's difficult to connect with people that are really looking to be in this space specifically. So this is something that connects all of us together to pool talent into that center and post the opportunities we have. So we're right in the season of looking for residents and interns as an example. We have students here today. Connect with those people, encourage people to go on that career center, and for people that have talent acquisition within their function or within their organization, encourage to reach out via that center so that we can begin building that more aggressively, which again helps to tell the story of the strength that we have here in Arizona.
Super, and I'll just add one thing. Many of you are familiar with Sun Corridor. It's based in Tucson, but really statewide, and they have a matching system for trailing spouses. And clearly, for so many of the people that we all recruit, they have a spouse who needs to get a job here as well, obviously, if they're moving in from out of state. So they've got a matching program where you can get to them, get a resume of the trailing spouse, and they will get it to local companies where the recruited spouse is and help match that and hopefully put something together very quickly that will allow you to recruit the key person you want, but you know you've got to get a job for that trailing spouse at the same time. So Sun Corridor and AZBio is a great way to connect that way. So as we close our panel, I'm going to ask each of our panelists now to talk about what is your #1 priority in your HR role for the rest of 2016? What do you see, and I'm going to give you another minute as I describe this to think about it, but what do you see as your number one priority, either opportunity or challenge going forward, that you and your organizations are going to focus on in terms of the war for talent? Adrienne, you want to start? No?
I'm not sure that question pertains to my little microcosm of life since I'm not in HR. For me, from the student point of view, it's finding more mentors for these really incredible students. From my lab point of view, it's finding talent at a grad student or possibly technician level. So I can't really speak for something really global.
But I'll follow up with 1 second. Are you finding enough mentors? Are there people who want to be mentors for the young people in your lab and the labs around you?
We are absolutely not finding enough mentors. I routinely take more students than I actually have room for because there's so many good students that apply. And it ends up being very competitive, and we don't want it to be. And we keep these kids, if they start as a sophomore, they stay for 3 years. I had a high school kid and a college undergrad present at the AACR meeting. They are awesome kids. So if anybody would like to take kids for their labs, it's not just for the summer, it's year-round. You can get a lot of work out of these kids, and they're awesome.
So I'm going to take a minute. Why is that? Is there lack of interest? Are the senior people just too busy? I mean, why are you not finding mentors in such an august institution?
It's not just our institution. We place kids anywhere in the valley that has positions. We're looking for mentors anywhere. And we basically do all the administrative work, and people just have to look at the application and say, yes, I'm interested, and then the student is matched with the mentor. I think that a lot of people don't know what these high school kids can do. They think they're going to be babysitters. To be honest, at first you will be until they prove themselves, which is how you get a lot of glassware washed. There's a time commitment up front, but I look at it like a computer. If you're going to learn a new software, you put time in at the beginning in the hopes that you get it back after you learn it, and that's what happens with these students. So it's really hard to get people to commit to having a young person in their lab and believe that they're going to get something back.
Well, super. We'll take that offline. I know you and the rest of the panelists will be here afterwards, but maybe we can work with Joan and have some sort of link for people who have now heard about this program
That'd
to
be
have
awesome.
the opportunity to connect. Stacie?
So I view our role in this practice as removing obstacles to drive business. And so I think that's always our focus. It's to look at the strategic plan of where the organization wants to go and to get all of the obstacles out of the way to get there, and leveraging everything we can around people and culture and values to help foster and grow the business even faster, and accelerate growth when we need to, and predict that growth so that we can support the business in real time. That to me is the job of the function. It's not everyone's view of the function, obviously. When people say HR, people roll their eyes, so it doesn't have the best reputation sometimes. But ultimately, that's why we view it differently, and I think it's ultimately why we've had incredible success.
Tom?
For our organization, it's continuing to develop the talent, ensuring that our workforce is ready to go when the organization needs it to align with the goals. So we want to make sure that we have the right talent with the right skills at the right time to be able to deliver.
And Brady, the last word here.
A lot of pressure. I'm going to agree with Stacie 100%. It's about what you're doing. Harvard Business Review this last month had an article where it said you can't fix culture. You just have to, basically the upshot was you just have to do the business. And so like Stacie says, do your business. But what I would assert is that you communicate to your people, and that's going to keep them around. There's good times and there's bad times. Luckily, hopefully we're all having good times right now. Communicate with them. Let them share in your success, and when times get tough, communicate them because they want to be part of the solution. So communicate, chart a course, and culture's going to follow, and your talent's going to stay. And Phoenix is a small place, so the talent's going to join you if they know you're taking care of your people.
Wonderful, wonderful wrap up. Thank you all. Please thank our panelists. Enjoy the rest of the conference.